What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Before I get started in the video, just want to say thank you to each and every one of you guys that came into the live streams the last couple of days. Always love talking New York Giants football with you guys, so thank you for that. But of course, a lot of news came out today with the New York Giants and some of the changes that they've made on their roster. Of course, yesterday, the official 53-man roster came out. That's kind of what we were talking about yesterday. I'm going to show that in this stream and talk about some of the changes that the New York Giants decided to make. Of course, this happens every single year after you come up with your 53-man squad. Everybody else has cuts around the league. Then you have the ability to go out there and make some moves. Well, the New York Giants made a couple of moves on waivers, and because of that, there were a couple of guys that were on the initial 53-man squad that no longer are. Also, practice squad came out today. Now, the official one is not out yet. I think this year you're allowed to carry 16 players on your practice squad. From what I've read, I think 13, at least as of now, is the official number, but I'll tell you where I think the rest will more than likely go, and we're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. But that is pretty much filled up. Of course, in years past, I think it was 12 players allowed on the practice squad, but now you have an extra game, and I think because of COVID, they're allowing an extra 4 players on the practice squad this year. So we'll go over all the players that will be on this New York Giants practice squad. We'll also go over some of the new players that the New York Giants brought in today, and there's one in particular that I'm very excited about, a guy that I initially thought should have been a 3rd or 4th round pick about 2 or 3 weeks leading up into the draft. But we'll jump into all of it throughout this video. The first thing we're going to touch on is yesterday's 53-man roster that came out. And 3 players that you see on this roster are no longer going to be on the 53-man roster for the Giants. They waived them. Now, from what I've read, it's possible they're going to be able to bring out some of these guys back on the practice squad. And CJ Board, even though it's not official yet, I think because the amount of years he's been in the league, teams don't have the ability to put a claim in for him. Board was one of the players that they waived today. In addition to that, they also waived Dante Pettis. And unfortunately, a fan favorite, a guy who did a great job in training camp, Trent Harris, also was waived by the New York Giants. The reason that he was waived, though, and this is good news, at least in my opinion, as much as I was rooting for Trent Harris, New York Giants brought in Quincy Roche. Quincy Roche, to me, was a very good edge rusher prospect in this year's draft. Now, you can definitely speculate as to why he became available. He was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He fell in the draft. Most people thought he'd be a 3rd or 4th round pick. He fell to the 6th round. The Steelers definitely have a stacked linebacking core, and I think that had a lot to do with why he became available for the New York Giants. He was at the Senior Bowl. I think Joe Judge, I read some quotes, got a good look at him. I'll talk more about Quincy Roche throughout this video. In addition to that, they picked up another really interesting prospect that I know for a fact a lot of Giants fans out there were really interested in just a year ago in the draft. But we'll talk about all of it. These are the official practice squad players as of now. Like I said, expect CJ Board to be here. Also, Sandro Platzkummer, I would assume, is going to be here. He's not on the list yet, and it's possible to work because if you look at this list, there's not a quarterback that's on it. But as of now, this is the official New York Giants practice squad. I think there's 12 or 13 names. I'll count them as we go. Damian Willis, who, of course, had a great preseason for the New York Giants, really stood out, had 3 or 4 touchdowns, caught the long ball by Glennon in that last preseason game. He gets to stay on, and that's good. Hopefully he could grow and maybe become a pro for the New York Giants, possibly as soon as next year. We'll have to wait and see. Matt Cole. Matt Cole really stood out and seemed to be a favorite of Joe Judge. Wide receiver, was known for special teams, was out there as the gunner on a couple of plays, and the Giants actually used him as a DB. And you always like to see that, and I'm sure Joe Judge likes to see that he's willing to be put in different situations. So Matt Cole will stay on with the Giants as well. In addition to that, fan favorite, who I know all you guys are rooting for to make the 53-man roster, David Sills went unclaimed, so he will be back. The Giants did officially put him on the practice squad. So that makes up 3 already, all of them wide receivers. Nico Lalos, who got an opportunity to play for the New York Giants last year, famous for being, I guess, from the same location as LeBron James. Of course, LeBron James tweeted something out when Lalos came up with, I think, the fumble recovery in that game. He'll be back for the Giants as well, the 2nd-year pro. That's the 4th guy on the list. Jackson Barton, a depth offensive lineman. The New York Giants decided to put on the practice squad, along with undrafted free agent Brett Heggie out of Florida, the center. Obviously, when we went out there and brought in Billy Price, you knew he wasn't going to make the team, but he will be on the practice squad for this team as he continues to try to develop for the New York Giants. In addition to that, the 7th name on this list, Kenny Wiggins. Kenny Wiggins stepped in. He was kind of the main backup guard in training camp before we made the moves that we did, with the trades later in the process after Zach Fulton retired. And even before Zach Fulton retired, he was the guy that was backing up Shane Lemieux. Didn't do that good of a job in the preseason games, but he will be on the practice squad, at least as of now, for the New York Giants. And that's the 7th name on the list. The 8th name is going to be a tight end, Jake Hossman. He was playing a bit for the Giants throughout training camp. Some speculated that he may have an outside chance to make the team as a 4th tight end. And some of these tight ends on this list definitely could make the official roster week 1, being that Evan Ingram may not play in that game. And if he's not going to play in that game, there's at least a solid possibility that the New York Giants will call up a 3rd tight end. Ryan Izzo, that was an interesting name, the 9th name on the list. The Giants brought him over from the New England Patriots. I think his career high in 2 years is about 200 receiving yards in a season. Of course, he has ties to Joe Judge. Played there in 2019 while Judge was the special teams and wide receiver coach for the New England Patriots, so I'm sure that had something to do with why the Giants brought him over. Another tight end on the list is Griffin Stewart. Again, participated throughout training camp with the New York Giants, will be on the practice squad. Another tight end, Chris, I think it's pronounced Myarick, perhaps, I don't know. Played with the Dolphins, doesn't really have much exposure in the NFL, but the Giants have rostered a lot of tight ends on this practice squad. Another offensive lineman in Jake Burton, and they picked up Dexter Williams. I think he's a former running back from Notre Dame that was on the Green Bay Packers. Played there for 2 years, didn't play much. Was a good player in college, though, and I think he was a 6th-round pick, if I'm not mistaken, when he came out a couple of years ago. So the Giants brought him onto the squad to be part of the practice squad, and I guess will be him and Platscomber more than likely. And if you look at those 13 names, that leaves 3 spots. Like I said, I think you're looking at Platscomber. You're probably looking at Lewerke. I think they'll roster a quarterback and CJ Board. That would be my guess. That's not official, but that would be my guess as to what the other 3 names will be. We'll have to wait and see, though. If Trent Harris clears waivers, if Dante Pettis clears waivers, I'm sure the New York Giants would entertain bringing them back. We'll have to wait and see. Next up, we're going to talk about the cuts that they made, like we've already talked about, and the players they brought in. This coming out from Art Stapleton. Giants release CJ Board. He is not subject to waivers, meaning that the New York Giants could just put him on the practice squad and waive Dante Pettis and Trent Harris, who are subject to claims. Had to make room for Colin Johnson, Quincy Roche, and Justin Hilliard. Also need a spot for Casey Kreider. Likely will be Ellison Smith to the IR. Ellison Smith, of course, the 4th-round pick in this year's draft for the New York Giants. He's been banged up all camp. And, yeah, you have to figure they're going to put him on IR. They need a long snapper. Right now, Kreider technically isn't on the roster, and I think that's how they'll make the final move. But they cut these 3 players to add these 3 players to the roster. And I want to get a better look at some of the players that the New York Giants brought in. I also want to pull up this tweet that I made. I think it was April 7th. Yeah, it says it right there. About 2 weeks leading up into the draft, and why I'm excited about this guy, and so you know I'm not blowing smoke. I was a fan of Quincy Roche. This is a tweet that I put out about 2 weeks before the draft. Quincy Roche is going to be a good player in the NFL. I hope the Giants get him in the 3rd round. And I was probably thinking more so 3rd or 4th round when I made that tweet. That's where a lot of people had him going. Like I said, he dropped to the 6th for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think a major reason why he's available is because of how talented that linebacking core is for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You talk to a lot of Steelers fans on Twitter. A lot of them are upset, and they thought that he could be a very good player for their football team. They just didn't have room on the roster. Roche started with Temple before he got an opportunity to go to Miami when they had their top defensive end sit out. Later was drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the 1st round. Roche was drafted later, but that's when he transferred to Miami after 3 years at Temple. Did a great job at Temple. He had 13 sacks in his junior season in 2019. Then he went to Miami last year, and he had 4.5 sacks in just 10 games. When I watched Roche on tape, and I haven't watched it recently, but I watched a lot leading up into the draft, he looked like a well-rounded player to me. It looked like he diagnosed the run well, and obviously he was a good pass rusher, right? He had great statistics at Temple, but he just looked like a well-rounded football player and a guy that I think a lot of people just forgot about. I also think he's a very good fit for this scheme, which is why I was interested in him, leading up into the draft, and I'm sure it's why the New York Giants decided to bring him on this football team, and I think it's a really good pickup. Definitely a guy with some upside, and certainly a guy that should be rostered from within the NFL. This is a scouting report on Roche. Quincy Roche, Pittsburgh 6th-round pick, is a natural pass rusher. He played 3 seasons at Temple and 1 at Miami. Joe Judge attended only 2 pro days in person last spring, Penn State and Miami. So he saw Roche work out pre-draft. There's a belief the Steelers were trying to develop Roche and thought he might sneak through waivers. The Giants pick up a young talent who can help them at an important position of need. Then this was Joe Judge speaking about Roche. I remember him having a good day down there, Judge said Wednesday before practice. Obviously, he's a good-sized player. He's got some short area quickness, initial burst. He's got a good motor. You actually go back and watch his tape at Miami. Go back to his days at Temple. There's enough on tape to make you interested. So there you go. I think that's a very sneaky good pickup by the New York Giants. I think that the only reason he became available, like I said, the Steelers were stacked at the position, and I think the Steelers were hoping they could sneak him through waivers, and the Giants said, nah, nah, nah. Next guy we're going to talk about is the linebacker, Hilliard. He doesn't really interest me too much here. They got him from the 49ers. He was undrafted, I think 2 years ago or a year ago perhaps. Had a lot of injuries while he was at, I believe he went, Ohio State. Had a lot of injuries, and everything that you read about the guy, most people seem to think he could potentially be a special teams contributor, but I don't think he's going to see the field outside of that. But this is about Hilliard. 6'1", 231 pounds, was signed by the 49ers as a rookie free agent on May 13th and released yesterday. In the preseason, he led the Niners with 18 tackles, 7 more than anyone else on the team, including 9 unassisted stops. Hilliard had 2 tackles for loss and a quarterback hit. At Ohio State, Hilliard played in 50 games with 7 starts and registered 84 tackles, including 9 for loss, 3 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 1 forced fumble. But like I said, when you read the scouting report on him, sounds like he could be a special teams contributor. I don't really see much more outside of that, but we'll see. I think we're pretty stacked at the middle linebacker position to begin with. And then finally, we're going to talk about Colin Johnson, who's a player that I really like that they brought in, another guy with high upside. And Jacksonville, yeah, they have some young wide receivers over there. They also brought in a couple of vets, which may have made Colin Johnson available. I remember when I was doing mock draft simulations for the New York Giants in the 2020 draft, a lot of Giants fans wanted Johnson, whether it was in the 5th round, the 6th round. He, last year, I believe, was the tallest wide receiver in the NFL at 6'6". And while he got limited opportunities with Jacksonville, he did have a lot of yards per catch. He only had 18 receptions for the Jaguars. He had 272 yards. He averaged 15.1 yards per reception, which would have led the Giants team last year. I think Slayton was the leader with 15 yards per reception, so he narrowly would have beat him out. Again, a very limited sample size. He did have 2 touchdowns, but I think his height alone is an attraction for the New York Giants, and a guy, like I said, with upside. He's only going to be 24 this year. Definitely could potentially help in the red zone. And you think about the Air Coryell scheme, you want tall threats on the outside. Do I think he'll start? No, but could he potentially be a solid receiver down the line? Absolutely. I think it's a high upside pick by the New York Giants, and quite frankly, one that I really like. You just saw it to me. I don't know what the hell I just did there, but I apologize for that. But yeah, there you have it. Those are the moves that the New York Giants made today. I like them. It's much like the offensive linemen we brought in each of the last 2 days. They're young players with a lot of upside, specifically Quincy Roche. It's unfortunate that it looks like we're going to lose Dante Pettis, and I'm assuming we're only going to go with 6 wide receivers to start the year. Expect to see CJ Board back on the practice squad. Didn't quite make the team due to specials, but we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. Want to get a quick video up for you guys explaining my opinion on all of the happenings for the New York Giants today. I'll be live tomorrow, I think, on Bad Dog's channel for Talkin Giants. If there's any news, of course, I'll have another video up for you guys as well. As always, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.